The trees are too still. You notice it before your brain can name it. No wind, no movement, just the weight of the forest pressing in from every side, and the screen in your hands showing you something you are not supposed to see. A structure deep in the trees, a door that is closed but should not be, a window that is dark but should not be. You tell yourself it is nothing. You tell yourself that a lot in the minutes before everything changes. The light is going, the air smells like wet bark and old rot, and somewhere behind that door, somewhere inside that darkness, something is listening to you breathe. A hut, low and crooked and very, very old, sitting in a clearing that should not have existed at that depth in the forest. The wood had gone black with years of moisture. The roof sagged on the left side. A narrow covered porch ran along the front, a radari, Dara called it in a language Marcus did not fully speak, her voice dropping in the way voices do when the mouth recognizes something before the mind catches up. The door was closed. Marcus noticed that immediately. Not fallen open, not rotted through. Closed. The handle was still in place. There was no padlock that he could see, but the door had the deliberate quality of something that had been shut by a person recently with intention. They did not speak for a moment. Then Dara said, "I want to go closer." The drone drifted toward the window, the camera pressed against the glass, or the digital equivalent of pressing, the lens hovering a few feet from the pane and gathering what light it could. At first, only darkness, wooden shapes, the suggestion of furniture. Then a shadow shifted, just slightly. Marcus told himself it was the camera angle. He told himself the drone had drifted a centimeter and changed the geometry of the reflection. He was very good at telling himself things. But he watched Dara's face as she watched the screen, and Dara did not look like someone who had just seen a camera angle. She switched the drone to follow mode. Marcus said, "Don't." She said, "Just a second." Pause. The drone began to move on its own. Not fast, not erratic, with direction, drifting along the side of the hut, then past it, moving deeper into the tree line, tracking something that existed at the edge of what the camera could resolve. Not clearly human, not clearly anything, just a shape in the dark that the follow mode algorithm had decided was worth chasing. Then the signal fractured. The screen went grainy, jerked sideways, and the feed went dead. Somewhere in the trees, past the clearing, past the hut with its closed door and its carefully shut handle, $1,000 piece of technology had just fallen into the dark. Dara was already calculating where it landed. Pause. They should have left. Marcus knew it then the same way he knew it later, when knowing it no longer helped. He was a man who trusted his instincts professionally. 11 years of reading weather, reading road conditions, reading the particular quality of silence that preceded something going wrong. Everything in him was reading that clearing the way it read black ice on an unmarked grade. But Dara had already started into the trees. He followed. The forest floor was the consistency of wet clay. Every step made a sound. The road noise fell away within 30 seconds, replaced by nothing. Not wind, not birds, not the ambient hum of living things that a forest at dusk should always carry. Just the sound of their own breathing and the soft collapse of their footsteps into the mud. The hut came into view between the trees. It was larger than the drone had made it look. The porch, the radari, listed slightly to the right. The wood had not just aged, it had been saturated over and over, season after season, until the grain had gone soft and dark as bruising. A window sat to the left of the door, the glass so coated with moisture and grime that the inside was entirely opaque. The door was still closed. Dara was looking at the ground near the base of the porch steps. He came closer and saw what she was looking at. A thread, thin as fishing line, nearly invisible against the dark soil,
strung low across the path and attached at one end to a length of cord that ran up to a handbell mounted to a wooden post beside the door. Old metal, blackened with age, but mounted deliberately, recently, at a height and angle designed to be triggered by someone walking toward the entrance without knowing to look for it. Her foot brushed the thread. The bell rang. Pause. Every bird in the canopy erupted at once. The sound crashed upward through the trees, and something in the bushes to the right moved fast and low, and then the forest that had been so perfectly silent recomposed itself into a different kind of silence, the kind that follows a warning being received. Marcus said, "We are leaving right now." Dara said, "The drone is just behind the hut." Marcus said, "I do not care about the drone." He cared about the drone. That was the problem. Not for the machine, for her, for the footage she had already taken of other routes and other forests, for what it meant to her that she had built something out of nothing after she stopped driving. He stood in the mud outside a hut with a tripwire on its path and a bell designed to announce visitors, and he told himself, 10 minutes, just the perimeter, just enough to spot where the drone landed and retrieve it before full dark. He told himself that.
The drone had come through an open section of the clearing and landed against the hut's rear wall. The propeller housing was cracked. The body was intact. Dar picked it up and held it the way she held things she was relieved to have back. Marcus was looking at the door. He was not sure, later, whether he had decided to check the door or whether his feet had simply moved in that direction. The handle turned. The smell came out first. Stale air and old moisture and something underneath both of those things. Animal, organic, the particular thickness of a closed space that had been occupied recently and then shut up tight. The room was not large. Wooden crates along one wall, broken furniture, metal tools hanging from hooks, short-handled and rusted and arranged in the neat way that working tools get arranged by people who use them often. Drag marks on the floor, boot prints in the damp soil near the center of the room. Not old prints, not dusty, wet at the edges the way prints look when the person who made them was still nearby. Marcus said, "We go. Now." They were halfway to the door when the floor collapsed. Not all of it. A single plank in the far corner, weakened by years of moisture from below, giving way under Marcus's weight without warning and dropping him into a cellar that should not have been there. He hit the mud at the bottom shoulder first. The pain was immediate and total. Above him, Dara appeared at the edge of the hole, hands gripping the broken boards. Below him, in the dark, the smell was worse. Chains on one wall, broken wooden structures that might once have been furniture or might once have been something else. Water accumulated in one corner, black and still. He did not shine the flashlight too long in any direction. He was afraid of what patience would reveal. He got back up. It took both of them and everything Dara could find to tie into something resembling a rope. It took 3 attempts and the kind of effort that leaves a person shaking for an hour afterward, but he got back up through the hole, and they stood on the rotting floor and looked at the door. The door was locked from the outside. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Then, from the porch, came the sound of footsteps. 2. Then silence. Then whispering, low and steady, and in a language Marcus could not place. Not German, not any Slavic dialect he recognized. Something older or more regional or entirely private.
2 voices, then a third, and then the sound of something heavy being dragged across the porch and placed in front of the door. The rain came down, not gently, in that flat, relentless way that autumn rain in the mountains comes down, as if the sky has simply lost interest in holding it. The roof moaned under the weight. Water found its way through the cracks and tracked dark lines down the walls. Outside, the voices continued, sometimes rhythmic, sometimes one voice leading and the others responding. The cadence of it just regular enough to feel deliberate, just irregular enough to resist being named. Then the sound of an axe on wood, methodical, patient, coming closer and then stopping and then starting again. Then the orange flicker of firelight through the gaps in the wall slats, moving, not fixed, as if the fire was being carried rather than built. They barricaded the door with everything that was not nailed down. They rationed the phone battery. They did not keep any light burning they did not need. Marcus sat with his back against the wall and counted the sounds outside the way he had once counted axle temperatures on a mountain descent, not to solve the problem, but because the counting itself kept the panic at a useful distance. At some point, Doris said, "Try the drone." He almost said no. Then he thought about what the drone's camera could see that they could not. He thought about the truck somewhere out there on the gravel shoulder, waiting. He thought about needing to know how many people were outside and where they were and which direction the road was in the dark. She assembled it by touch in the dim room. She opened the side window just enough to ease it out without sound and let it sit in the wet grass while the controller connected. Low battery, damaged, but the screen flickered on. The camera tilted upward, grained and stuttering in the low light. Trees, black sky, the suggestion of the forest road, and then their truck, recognizable on the gravel shoulder even through the noise and distance, and beside the truck, near the driver's door, a figure. Not a normal figure. Too tall, the proportions slightly wrong, the shoulders too broad, the head seated too low between them, the arms hanging at a length that did not quite make sense against a human frame. It was facing the cab, looking in, as if waiting. The banging on the door started the same moment the drone's battery died. Not knocking, not requesting, force. The whole structure of the hut shifting with each impact, the barricades sliding, the hinges groaning in their ancient sockets. Voices outside now at full volume, not whispering, calling out to each other across the clearing in that language that held no known shape. Then scratching at the window, then silence, then banging again. The silence was worse than the banging, because in the silence, you could hear them moving to different positions.
The silence that finally settled was different. Not the silence of absence, the silence of exhaustion maybe, something that had been burning down to an ember while they waited inside and now had gone temporarily dark. Marcus pressed his ear to the side wall and heard nothing but rain and settling wood. He waited 5 minutes, then another 5. He said, "The side window." They opened it slowly. The air that came in was cold and wet and smelled like living forest. Marcus put his head out first and looked both directions along the wall. Dark ground, the back corner of the hut, nothing standing, nothing moving. He dropped out, then helped Dara through. They moved along the wall in a crouch, keeping their shadows against the wood, not looking toward the front of the hut. Dara squeezed his sleeve. He turned. On the porch, barely visible in the dark, something lay lengthwise on the wooden boards, not clearly human in shape. No defined edges, no clear head, no arms, just a dark mass, low and slow, moving up and down with the deliberate rhythm of breath, just breathing in the dark, waiting. They ran. The forest at night is a different country. The ground that had been uneven in the dusk was treacherous in the dark. Roots copped their feet, the mud pulled at every step. Behind them, not a direct pursuit, but a scattered one, footsteps spreading out through the trees in multiple directions at once, voices carrying orders from one position to another, branches cracking in a wide arc, as if they were being driven towards something rather than simply chased. They went to ground in a depression behind a thicket of brush, close to where Marcus had marked the road in his mind. Old instinct. He always marked the road, always knew which way back. The footsteps came closer, spread, passed to the right. Then someone called out, and the movement shifted, and gradually the sound of pursuit became the sound of search, and the sound of search became the sound of distance. They did not move for 15 minutes, maybe more. When they did move, it was quietly, quick steps along the tree line, not running, conserving, keeping the road to the right where Marcus knew it was. The gravel shoulder appeared under his feet before he saw it. The truck was there. Both doors were open. He stopped. They had closed those doors. Inside, food had been scattered across the floor. The bag of supplies had been torn, small items pushed aside and sorted through with a thoroughness that felt less like ransacking and more like cataloging, as if something had been looking for a specific thing and had not found it. But the keys were there, the paperwork, the wallets. Nothing taken that had a name on it. Just presence, evidence of presence. Marcus got the engine started on the second try. The sound of it was the best sound he had ever heard. He got the truck moving before his hands had stopped shaking. In the side mirror, as the headlights swept the road, shapes moved at the edge of the light, tall, wrong proportioned, neither running nor walking quite correctly. One came close to the driver's side window, close enough that he could see it raise its head toward the cab window. He put the truck in gear and did not stop again until the service lights of the highway appeared in the distance. Dara had not spoken since the forest. She sat with her hands flat on her knees, looking forward. Neither of them said anything. There was nothing to say that the night had not already said. I want to ask you something. Not about what was in that forest. Not about what kind of people or what kind of things set traps with tripwires and bells, or locked doors from the outside, or gathered around a fire in the rain and did not leave, or stood beside a truck in the dark, looking in through the glass at something that was not there. I want to ask you about the bell, because that is the part that stays with me. Not the shapes at the edge of the headlights, not the thing breathing on the porch in the dark. The bell, mounted carefully, positioned precisely, set to ring the moment you crossed into a space that was not yours to enter. It means someone anticipated you. Before you came, before you parked, before the drone found its way through the canopy, someone looked at that clearing and that path and that door and decided that when something arrived, they wanted to know about it. Think about that. Think about how many places you have walked through in your life, forests and fields and empty parking lots and corridors with the lights out, and never heard a bell. That doesn't mean there wasn't one. After the horror, we begin where the story should have ended.